Hi friends, welcome back to my channel, Chris D Redefined, and today I want to hit up a topic that you might not be familiar with. It's it's a philosophy of life that I've followed for, I don't know, probably at least since 2010, maybe 2011. It's called Law of Attraction. Some of you may be real familiar with it if you follow a kind of an inspirational speaker, Abraham Hicks or Esther Hicks. Also, if you listen to like Wayne Dyer, who used to live on Maui and has passed away, Louise Hay, you'd be familiar with this approach to life. It's called Law of Attraction. And a lot of people are misinformed about it. They think that if you just wish for something that, if you wish and think positively about it, it's just going to land in your lap. That's not quite what it's about. So I want to kind of give some examples about how law of attraction has really been evident in my life, and that's why I'm a huge believer of it, because it comes true for me all the time. There are a couple things that I'm not in vibration with that I still want, but I understand why I haven't reached those goals yet. But okay, so here's a great for it. I always use my Jeeps as examples, because for some reason I manifest cars that I want like that, or it seems really easy. So okay, here's a great example. Back in 2002, I would jog around the city of Philadelphia. I still lived in Philadelphia. I worked for the federal government. I lived in Center City, Philadelphia, and I would go for a morning jog almost every morning. And right in front of my apartment, there was someone that lived on my block that owned a Jeep Wrangler Sport 4.0. 4.0 liter Jeep Wrangler Sport with, I think they had BFF Goodrich tires. And I used to stare at it every time I'd go for a run. I would stop. I would literally stop on my run and stare at this Jeep and say, I really want a Jeep exactly like this Jeep. And I dreamed about it, and I thought, I want to live on an island one day, and one day I'm going to own a Jeep just like this. And I just always would say that to myself. One day I'm gonna live on an island. I'm gonna own a Jeep like this, exactly like this. And so I would go about the rest of my day and just think about the Jeep in a pleasant way. Like, wouldn't it be cool to like be driving around in that Jeep? So I don't know how to say this, but in the spring of 2003, so this is 2002 that I would be jogging around Philadelphia and dreaming about it. In the spring of 2003, I wanted to live on an island, and I was going to make it work on my own without any help. So I saved up a ton of money, and I planned to move to the U.S. Virgin Islands. I had visited there already, and I wanted to live there. And I wanted it to, they speak English there. They're tiny islands. I was dying to live on an island. So I actually saved up, I forget how many, maybe 10, 12,000, 20,000, whatever dollars I saved. I worked for the federal government, and I actually turned in my resignation to the government. So, so this is all tied together with the Jeep. So I turned in my resignation to the government, and I made a plan to go try to work in Airbnb and maybe be a personal trainer on an island in the U.S. Virgin Islands. And I had identified St. John as the island I wanted to go to because I had visited there and I really loved it there. So I turned in my resignation, and shortly after I turned in my resignation, within a couple weeks, there was a conference that the Department of Labor was giving, and I was asked to be a guest speaker. A subcontractor of the department I worked for was giving it, and they asked me to be a speaker. I was going to go to the Caribbean all on my own and spend all my own money. I went to this island, I went to this conference, and I gave my talk. They asked me to speak on a topic that I was an expert in. I spoke on it. Afterwards, or while I was speaking on stage, I see the vice president of the company. His phone is ringing, and he answers it, and he leaves the conference room. And he comes back, and I was just ending my my talk, and I come to the back of the room, and he's drinking coffee, and he said, Chris, can I talk to you for a second? I said, sure. And he said, hey, that was Cookie. She was the vice president of Eastern Operations, and she told me that you turned in your resignation. You're going to quit Job Corps. And I said, yeah, I'm quitting. I want to live on an island. I really want to live on an island, and I know that sounds silly, but I'm going to go. And he said, isn't that funny? We have an opening on the island of Maui, and we think you would be a great candidate. Is the vice president of this company speaking. You work for the federal government. You know exactly what you're doing, in regard to running a facility and what the government is looking for its contracts. We would like you to be a candidate for the director of the Maui Job Corps Center. And I was like, what? I totally had not planned to move to Maui. I was like, what are you talking about? So I immediately said, just tell me before the end of the week if you want to be considered for it. So I call my mom immediately. I'm in Washington, D.C. I was in Utah. And I call my mom and I'm like, I just got kind of offered this job in Hawaii, Mom. What do you think? And she was like, what, are you crazy? You're not married. You don't have kids. Take the job. So anyway, long story short, I took the job. Those of you that have watched my channel, you know I'm from Maui. I spent 20 years on the island of Maui. So getting back to the Jeep. Anyway, I dreamed of living on an island. Suddenly, I turned in my resignation to the government. I was going to move to an island. Suddenly, I got a job offer from a company giving me a full relocation package, a job, a month worth of car rental and hotel until I could find a car and a place to live. And it was a full relocation package. And, not super a lot of money, but enough to survive on the island of Maui. And so I was like, okay, I'll take the job. So I took the job. I moved to Maui, and I had to buy a car. I was like, okay, I can't. I live far away from where from where the Job Corps Center is. The Job Corps Center is up country, if you know Maui, and I live by the beach in Kihei. And I knew I had to drive to work. It's a 40 to 45 minute drive every day, and I knew I had to drive. So I was like, okay, I got to find a car that I can afford. So I started going around the car dealerships to look. A staff person who knew Maui, because I'd never been to Maui in my life. A staff person who knew Maui took me around to the different car dealerships. Every time I wanted a Jeep, obviously. Every time I went to a car dealership, they would say, we just sold our last Jeep. We literally don't have any Jeeps on the lot. We usually do, but for some reason they're really popular this month. Went to like 5 car dealerships. Finally, the last car dealership, she said, let's try this place. I don't really like dealing with the guy. I've had a bad experience with him, but let's go. We start pulling into this car dealership, and lo and behold, up on a ramp facing the street, saying buy me on it, was the yellow Jeep that I'd always jogged by when I lived in Philadelphia every morning. It was the exact model, and when I looked in the interior, it was the same exact cloth coverings on the car seats. And I did the thing you're not supposed to do when you buy a car. I walked right into the dealership and I said, that Jeep that's on the lift that's facing the street, I'm going to buy that Jeep now. Which is totally not the way to buy a car. That is so not the way to buy a car. My coworker tried to warn me not to do that, but I was like, I'm not playing around. I know what I want. When I want what I want, I get what I want. I want that. And I wound up with the Jeep that I always jogged by every day for over a year, that I would look at and stare at longingly, knowing that I would get that Jeep. But I didn't know how. I just knew I would get it. I would be like, okay, I'm going to have that Jeep. I don't know how, but I'm going to get one. Lo and behold, about a year and a half later, maybe I can't even remember when, but I wound up with that Jeep. A strange thing, that's kind of how I got my son. I had also planned on adopting a child when I lived in Philly. I think it was 2000 or 2001. I had a great paying job working for the government. I was single. I was like, I'm tired of it just being me and me being selfish and going out and partying and having fun. Sounds silly, really silly. But I wanted to have a son. I wanted a son really bad. And I went to an adoption agency and I started the process, and for some reason it just didn't feel right. I was like, something that just doesn't feel right about this process. And so I stopped the process. I was like, okay, I don't know why, but I'm getting this feeling like it just doesn't feel right. And so then I went to Maui. This is, all in between. I went to Maui and I started living on Maui. And what's really weird is I landed there in July of 2003 and I met my son's father. We had we were friends and we became more than friends. And eventually by Christmas of 2003, I was pregnant with my son. So that's how I got my son. So the universe stopped me from adopting a boy. I just felt weird. I was like, this adoption process isn't working. I don't know what's going on. It just doesn't feel right to me. And so I stopped it. And lo and behold, the universe sent me my son in the most perfect circumstances. I had a boy. I lived on Maui. I had great medical coverage. At the time, his father and I were doing well. His dad's actually, up until my son became a teenager, his dad was a great dad. And, I wound up with a son, which is how I have this channel. But I wanted a son, and the universe sent me a son. It wasn't the way I planned, just like moving to an island wasn't the way I planned. I was planning on going to the Virgin Islands and becoming a personal trainer at a resort, and then living out of an Airbnb and maybe helping the Airbnb, and that's how I would have a room at the Airbnb. Like, I planned all this, and the universe sent me a job working for the government on the island of Maui instead of the way I planned on reaching an island. And all of this is to say, okay, another good example, I wanted to move to Lisbon. I was really unhappy when my son and I became estranged. As you all know, I became depressed. And my brother, it was around Christmas time, and my brother asked me, Chris, what do you want for your Christmas present? And I told him, can you get me a picture of Lisbon, like a streetcar on Lisbon, one of the cable cars? And he found a lithograph and sent it to me for Christmas. And I put it right on my wall in my living room, in a very prominent place in my living room. I stared at it every day. Every day I stared at that lithograph. And of course I made things happen. I put things in place and everything. But today, if I take the metro station down for 14 minutes, I can hop on the exact cable car that my brother got me a lithograph of, the picture of. In fact, I can show it to you. It is, don't look at my laundry. It's over there. There is a lithograph of the exact cable car that I dreamt of, and I can jump right on that cable car in 14 minutes from here. So that is to say, if you are a match and you just dream, you put that dream out there. It happens all the time in my life. It happens. I wanted a bohemian lifestyle where I lived kind of in this strange way in a rooftop apartment somewhere. I dreamed of it, like on Flashdance, where the dancer Alex lives in this, she lives this bohemian lifestyle as a dancer, and she lives in this kind of industrial building. I wanted that. I was 15 when I saw that movie, and I dreamed about it. Don't you know, but I live in a commercial building, rooftop apartment with vaulted windows, and I live a really bohemian way. If you just dream something, and then you don't worry about how exactly it's going to happen, but you dream about it, it works for me. So I'm a huge, huge proponent of law of attraction. Dream something, want it, and then weirdly forget about it. The universe will start to put things in motion for it to happen for you. Even to this day, I wanted to be back in touch with my son. I kind of just didn't worry about it, and now at least he's emailing me. I worried a lot about it. I was very sad about it, which is the opposite of what you should do with law of attraction. You actually should just be happy about something and having a dream and then forget about it. But who can forget when they're estranged from their child, right? So it took a while for me to reconnect with my son, but at least we're emailing each other. So I'm a huge proponent law of attraction. If you want to learn more about law of attraction, I'm not a law of attraction guru. I just know that in my life I have many examples of it working. You could search up on YouTube, search up Abraham Hicks or Esther Hicks, Law of Attraction, and you'll find tons and tons of videos of her workshops. And if you start listening, she covers everything from relationships to family and children to career, to world events, and money. She covers all topics that every human being has on their mind. And so love, familial relationships, all that. So I highly recommend learning about it and just seeing if it works for you. It certainly works for me. That being said, I hope that you like this episode. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button, and we'll talk more about this in coming episodes here on my channel, Chris D. Redefined.